Now, Ontario is expecting to receive its supply of pediatric COVID vaccines for children under 5 this week, but there's been some concerns about the shot for toddlers. Sabina Vohra-Miller is a pharmacologist, and her son was a part of the clinical trials. She joins us now live this morning to share her experience. Good morning, Sabina.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And you know what? These vaccines and these medicines, they cannot get out without these trials. So great respect to anyone who volunteers to help, the public at large and the greater good. So, thanks for that. And what made you decide to have your family a part of this? And what was your experience like when doing it?
Yeah, and so I think when we first found out about the clinical trial for under 5, we had had vaccines for the adult population for almost a year at that point. And so, I wasn't very concerned at that point regarding safety of the vaccines. I had a fairly good idea of what we were looking at. We were also approaching, the tail end of the Delta wave and the start of the Omicron wave, which we didn't realize at that time. And we wanted to try and give an opportunity to our son to be protected the way we were, with the understanding that we didn't really know that whether he would actually get the vaccine or the placebo. And so the way we thought about this as a family was that, either he gets the vaccine and he'll be protected, or he gets placebo and we still help science to further these vaccines for the under 5 population. And we did actually speak to our son. We explained to him what the trial meant. We explained what the process is going to be. We talk about vaccines a lot at home, even before the pandemic. So he had a really good understanding of what these vaccines do, how they make him stronger, how they help the community. So, we did have a really good discussion as a family before we made this decision. And in retrospect, it was the right decision for our family.
That's amazing. And in the end, you did find out that he did receive the active vaccine itself. What was his reaction like? Any symptoms coming up?
Yeah, he was very excited when we actually, when we were unblinded and I told him what he got, that he did actually get the vaccine. He was very excited. He was very thrilled. And he went around screaming, yay, all over the house. So it was really sweet to see that he was just as excited as, me, his mom. We did have a bit of an inkling that he did get the vaccine just because of some mild side effects. He took it really well. At the day of the vaccine, he was very tired. He wanted to go to bed himself, and which 5-year-old wants to go to bed, or 4 at that time, wants to go to bed, by themselves. And so we wondered whether he actually did get the vaccine. And so I guess it didn't come as a huge surprise to us when he was unblinded, but it was still very, very reassuring. And I think we all just let out a huge sigh of relief knowing that the last few months he'd been protected, at least from severe illness against COVID.
And we're just showing some information here about the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine. 2 weeks after the second dose, vaccines 37% effective in trial participants ages 2 to 5. There are some parents out there who are concerned about the effectiveness of the vaccine and whether or not it's worth, they're trying to balance whether or not they should give their kid this vaccine. Considering some of the numbers here, what would you say to some of those parents who have that concern and may be holding out?
Yeah, great question. I think the vaccine efficacy data is a little, this trial actually occurred during the Omicron wave, right? And so we have to understand that the vaccine efficacy is sort of reflective of the variant that we have in place right now. What was really reassuring is that in the trials, they did immunobridging studies. And then those are studies where they looked at the antibody levels in these under 5 population, and then they compared it to adults in the 18 to 25. And they found that the under 5 group had the same, or in fact higher, antibody levels when compared to the young adult group. So if you're actually looking at it, comparing it against the adult vaccines, they're, in terms of antibody titers, they were the same or in fact higher, right? And I think that's the really key thing that we have to keep in mind. The second thing is this vaccine efficacy in the data and the study was actually based on just symptomatic illness. What's really important is to remember that the vaccines are helping prevent severe illness and severe complications. Now, Now, while these are generally, for the most part, rare in children under 5, it is still the 5th leading cause of death in the US for children who are under age 5. So that's COVID. And then the second part is it's so unpredictable to know which child ends up having severe illness. So if you look at the hospitalizations in the US, again, more than 50% were in completely healthy children without any underlying health conditions. And then you also have things like, MIS-C that can occur even after mild infections. And there's also things like long COVID, which we know occurs in between 5 to 15% of children despite having mild illnesses. So the important part here to remember is that the vaccines are actually preventing against some of these more severe, more long-term, long COVID type of situations, and offering that your child that protection against these severe illnesses. And of course, every time I talk about vaccines, I have to talk about risk versus benefit. It's such an important thing to remember when you're making any decisions on any vaccines, any medications, any drugs that children are given. We know that it took so long to get the vaccines here for under 5 because we wanted to make sure that they were safe. We wanted to do the due diligence. We wanted to make sure it was efficacious. And so we're at this point right now. They've been approved, and all diligence has been done to ensure they're safe and effective. So parents should feel very reassured about this going in.
And it's good timing considering we are heading into the school season. Sabina, thank you so much for joining us once again. And thank you for putting your family up to volunteer and help the greater good, like we said.